Today, I want to talk about boundary setting, and that has been my worst enemy and my best friend at the same time. My best friend because it has saved my life, boundary settings for sure. My worst enemy because it has been, and it still is, quite challenging, a challenging thing to do. And for my life, I thought I would never be able to do this. Um, so to start, I just want to give you a little bit of a story of something that happened recently to me. Um, what you might have heard the term flying monkey attack. Um, but if you haven't, what is a flying monkey? Well, it's someone that is sent by your narcissistic mother um, for her own purposes. So when she realizes that whatever she is doing is not really reaching you as much as she would like, she finds some other person that can come in and speak for her. And usually the purpose of this is to make you feel bad in some way, guilty, and to get you back in the loop. So I received a call in which um, I'm asked to be the smart one, to be the good girl everyone knows I am, and to come back from my stance and whatever boundaries I have set with my own mother, um, because I'm hurting by with my decision. I am hurting also this third person, and it's honey sweet talk, and this is one of the many ways you can be approached. Usually what I've observed, especially well within my family for sure, but listening to other people talking about this, is that the honey sweet talk is like one of the first ways you can be approached, because they they know that they can get you in that way, that guilt tripping starts happening. If they approach you straight away with a hard front, um, it's kind of easier to set a boundary when you are outright being insulted. But when they're being super, super nice, that makes it really, really a lot harder. Um, So at this point in my life, I am aware that this particular person that called me uses this strategy. He has all my life. There is not just one narcissist in my family, for sure. So I'm curious, what about in yours? Um, how many members of your family only think about themselves and they're not concerned at all about trampling on your feelings as they go, as if they were entitled to everything? It's a quite difficult, if not impossibly difficult situation for a child to navigate. And when I was a kid, I took on the role of the nice girl, the one it is impossible to fight with, the one that will bring peace in the family, because I was the one everyone could talk to. So the way this person approaches me is reminding me of how much of a nice girl I am, and that trying to get to that part of me that he's used to, try to bring that nice girl back out, he will be able to achieve ultimately his own goals, um, because yes, a narcissist will always look to achieve their own goals. They're not actually there for the greater good, although they're telling you, um, as a flying monkey will, it's like, I mean, this is for the greater good, this is for the peace of the family. If you come back into this loop, everything will be fine. And at the moment, there's a challenging situation that they're not able to handle, but they need you because you are gonna save it. But that's actually really not the point. The point is that they are not able to handle it. That's uncomfortable for them. You, by taking your stance and setting your boundary, you are forcing them to look inside a little, and that's really uncomfortable. Really, really uncomfortable. Um, but what can you do? That's not your baby anymore, is it? Or at least definitely was not my baby. So I just said no and no and no to everything that he brought. And from the honey sweet talk, we're passing very, very quickly to aggressive and angry and bitter and frustrated and definitely insulting eventually. Um, and that's where it's really important to keep strong on your boundaries. We're gonna go through in this episode. We're gonna speak to how to do that. There's one, there's literally one key secret into how to set boundaries that work with a narcissistic mother and the flying monkey attacks, because it's very much part of the same thing. Um, yeah, it's the one key thing that has changed my life completely. I've read books on boundaries. I've been told by so many different teachers and so many different ways and advised, but this one thing is the one thing that has really just struck home and has changed everything for me. So I'm gonna share this in the course of this episode. Just bear with me for a little while till we get there. So the role of being the one that is the doormat of the family, the person that everyone can talk to within your family, especially if you have a family dynamic where it's not just your mom that is a narcissist, but like she has a lot of allies, and you're kind of like the one that stands out, the one that has started to understand that there's something not really working within that environment. You're sensitive, perhaps very sensitive, and this is causing your hurt, but because they're your family, you want to bring peace. You want to help them see that things are maybe, they could be different. Um, and it's very hard to do that. So what you do, and what I've done anyways for the best part of my life, is taking the role of the person that everyone can go to. My family was quite a big family, so there were a lot of people involved, and they would all come to me, they would all talk to me, and I learned early on that doing so would have me become the one that no one was ever blaming for anything. I was the one that just didn't argue, and everyone could come and talk, and I would just resolve whatever was going on between one person and the other, and then the other person and the other, and would any of them stand up for me when I needed? No, absolutely not. But I told myself I didn't mind. And even when I was dying on the inside, I kept being nice in the hope that eventually they would understand. And the few times I dared speak for myself, either they got upset or gaslighting was all I received, which it's something, if you haven't heard the term before, I'm gonna do episodes about it, but essentially it is a way of, you can go back to the episode where I'm talking about the different ways a narcissistic mother can, the 10 signs of how to understand if your mother is a narcissist, and gaslighting is one of those, is a way to manipulate reality so that you actually feel the one that is crazy ultimately by the end of the conversation. So although I received all that treatment, I kept being nice because I thought that would break the cycle of pain in my family. If I could support everyone and be the doormat, the cycle would finally stop. And this person that rang me, that called me, expected to find that. Although it has been a number of years that I've pulled myself out of that dynamic, old habits die hard, and he hoped he could suck me back in with that technique, and he found a brick wall of no. But it has taken me years to realize how destructive a pattern that was. Um, Definitely breaking the cycle of pain within your family is not it's not about being docile and people pleasing. Although I really get how as a child that was the only way to survive. So if that is what you have been doing as well for however long you've done this, I want to remind you that it is okay. You've done super well, and you're here now. So be kind to your past self. You'll hear me saying this again and again and again. She did the best that was available to her at any moment. You did the best. And it's really, really, truly important to remember that, because as you go along on this journey, you will learn more and more about yourself. You will actually get in real contact with amazing strengths you have inside. And there's going to be grief. There's going to be grief about if you had known what you know now back then, how things would have been different. That's a really uncomfortable part of the journey. And that's where being kind, so kind to yourself, it's important, to your past self. You didn't know those things. You weren't listening to this podcast. You didn't even know your mother was a narcissist. I didn't know. I had no idea. I thought my mom was just my mom, and that every mom was like that. And if other moms were different, well, that was the mom I had, and I had to make the best, because I loved my mom. I love my mom still now, and you try to make the best with what you've got, and you try to protect yourself as much as you possibly can with the tools you have in the moment. So be very, very, very kind with your past self in this journey. So breaking the cycle is about boundaries. Boundaries. And as I say, a word that has scared me for the best part of my life. I truly believed I could die if I ever set a boundary for myself with my mother. Genuinely. Like, it was that scary. But you gotta start somewhere. And it's, for however scary it is, it's the one thing that can change everything in your situation. So whatever mess they choose to stew in, whatever mess your mom's life is, whatever situation she is in, whatever martyr story she throws your way, it's her choice. You are not responsible for it, and you do not have to be a part of it. She has trained you from when you were a very small child to believe that you are responsible for her situation. And she might have used very indirect ways to do that, or super brutal direct ways, like, all I have to do is because you are such a bad child, and look how I have to behave. Look at the life I have because you are in my life, because everything I do is for you, although you are a bad child. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I know I've heard so many times things similar to that in my childhood, and that makes you believe you're responsible, and so that you have to fix it, and that it's down to you to be there for her, and the energy flow, instead of going as it would naturally go from mother to child, that's the direction of the energy of the nourishment. The nourishment goes from mother to child. It doesn't go the other way around. Of course, there is a mutual, amazing love, benefit, exchange, but the nurturing mother energy goes one way. And what happens when you have a narcissistic mother, she wants it to go the other way around. And all of this is subconscious. She doesn't know she does that, whatever, but that's what happens, okay? Um, so I couldn't say no. I genuinely couldn't say no to my mother, and also to other members of my family that had the similar behavior. So a phone call like the one that I received a while ago would have gotten me back to square one very easily, would have left me feeling guilty and deeply upset for days or weeks, would have had me rushing to, ring my mother immediately after the phone call and just endure whatever amount of crap she wanted to throw my way, so in the hope that I could make her feel better. And then I would just be in between this like really bad guilt, sort of shame mix of feeling, and the validation that I received for being the savior of the situation. So it's like it's a deadly mix. And it would make me turn also against my new family, because my partner, my children, they would see the upset. They could feel that um, I wasn't there available for them, where the energy is actually meant to go. And I could even just get quite nasty with them and go like, leave me be. Don't you see? I need to sort this thing. Like, this is important. And prioritize my mother's situation instead of my own kids, which again is the flow of energy. Can you see how you might, without realizing, begin to repeat the pattern? And you think you're doing something amazing because you're helping your mom, when you're actually just trying to avoid the guilt feeling that happens inside of yourself because she trained you that way. And then you are beginning to withdraw the nurturing mother energy from your own kids, if you have any, or in the future if you're thinking about it. Yeah, you're taking that energy that it's there to receive away from them, to turn it towards your mother. And that's really a mess. That's really not what's meant to happen. um, and we don't want that. So I could not, as I say, I couldn't say no. I couldn't deny them anything. My mother, first of all, they blamed each other all the time. And I thought I was special because they didn't blame me, as I said. And that was until I set the first boundary. Well, that changed things. Every single time that I actually attempted to say no to something and to set a boundary for myself and to begin to live my life, starting possibly when I was a teenager, when you start actually want to do your own things, then I've started seeing really how dysfunctional things had been, um, up until that point. But because I wasn't setting any boundaries, they weren't really needing to go all the way to the set of special effects that they had in store for me. Um, so narcissists will react very badly to boundaries, because you have no right to set your boundaries. You are not in the understanding of your narcissistic mother. You need to understand that she doesn't see you as a separate person from her, as a whole person for yourself. Like, you don't have your own identity. You're not your own sovereign being in her mind, in her way to behave towards you. You are her property. You're an extension of her. So she has every right to say and do whatever to you. So she will get nasty, raging, aggressive. She can say things to hurt you, threaten you. She can also withdraw her love. So, of course, tell you she won't talk to you anymore, or that, she won't see you anymore, give you the silent treatment. Or she can go condescending, like you're the poor weak thing that can't cope. And again, a bit of gaslighting, telling you that you have some major mental issue. At some point in my life, when I tried to set some boundaries for myself, I was told I was, chronically depressed, and that I couldn't cope, and that, she understood how I was, and it ran in the family, and I had no way out of being that way, and my destiny was to be chronically depressed for the rest of my life. That was so not true. And have you ever been there? Have you ever been told things like that from by your mother, by members of your family even? You know, and it's tough. And I get it. If you have, I really, really get it. And I get how the idea of setting boundaries can be scary, can be really scary, because if you've tried before, you know the consequences. So I get that. So, as we said, setting boundaries with a narcissistic mother or any other member of your family that have a narcissistic behavior is no easy task, especially considering that a mother with a narcissistic behavior has trained you, as we said, since you were a child, that boundaries are bad, that you are bad for even considering saying no. You are bad to even consider to make your own choice without asking her first. And she has done that through shame and guilt so that she can control you. That it's always a control game with a narcissistic mother. That's just what she feeds on. And the worst of it is, and I've heard that, I felt that, but I've been told this by therapists. How dare you be in some way against your mother? Society is there for the most part to support your mother in that behavior, because it is frowned upon to say no to your mother, to deny her anything she needs after she has done so much for you. I mean, she has done so much to put her roof over your head. She has done so much to feed you. She has brought you into this world. And the guilt trip continues. So it's quite a widespread thing. If you're feeling that is challenging to speak how you truly feel about your mom, we're gonna go deeper into this in other episodes, but it's a very common thing. Like I felt that for a long time. When someone asks you about, oh, but like, how's the relationship with your mom? Oh, it's whatever, it's my mom. And but what you want to really say is, my relationship with my mom is shit. And she is really horrible to me. And I feel like crap every time I talk to her. But you don't feel like you're allowed to say this, because everyone is always kind of, thinking that mommy is like this sacred kind of being that it can't be touched. Um, and that's not helpful. That's not helpful, because a part of the process is to find your anger. Boundaries, anger is the emotion behind boundaries. And if you can't find your voice, your anger, that part in you, not aggressive, not insulting, that's not needed. But sometimes when you are within a safe environment and there is that shadow work too to be done. There is a part I've had to growl and shout and roar, and what came out was ugly. Uh, and that was like the hardest part, because of this conditioning that you cannot turn against your mother. I've even been told at times, like, the dog shouldn't turn against the hand that feeds them. It's like, well, I'm not a dog. Like, this doesn't make any sense. But you're told that so often that you really believe that, and you're only a kid. Just to remember that if you've had a narcissistic mother, it's been since you were a baby. She hasn't just turned like that at one point, and she was like loving and nurturing and perfect and amazing as a mom, and then all of a sudden she turns into this nasty beast. She has actually been a narcissist since the very beginning, because whatever whenever that pattern set into her own behavior, that was when she was small, and she has learned whatever strategies because of what she's been through. And so you've been suffering since the very start. You've been conditioned since you were a baby. Um, that setting boundaries, that speaking up in front of your mother, that saying your part, it's not accepted, and it's a bad thing. It makes you a bad child. For years, I heard about the concept of setting boundaries and rationally understood it was a good idea, yet I could not do it. It didn't matter how my life was going, but I couldn't do it. And what I did, which was some kind of a boundary in a way, but I put distance instead. I literally moved country, put miles and miles of distance so that I felt that way I could not face it head on, and I could just live my life. And that did help. So if you have done something like that, if you have put physical miles of distance, that is for sure a help. I get that. But what I realized was that the emotional control was still there. Um, that voice in my head making me feel guilty was not shutting up. And the shame I carried within me continued to dictate my every choice. Um, and and also, it's not that easy to get rid of the hooks, like the phone calls, the messages, or you haven't called me for so long. When are you coming to see me? Um, I really, I'm feeling so bad, and you're the only one that can help me, kind of thing that remained. Um, Weeks of recovery after every phone call, like literally weeks before I could go back to be somewhat myself. And that myself was still, anyway, highly influenced by all that I carried inside as a result of my mother's behavior. And my marriage was falling apart. My work was not going anywhere. My relationship with my eldest daughter was showing all the signs of becoming like all others in my family, a messy relationship. And what I know now, I didn't know back then, but with narcissistic patterns beginning to show within my own behavior towards my daughter. Although what I have always said and always wanted was to be completely different from my mom towards my own children, learning and understanding and being with myself and seeing how my daughter reacted, I realized I was beginning to bring all those patterns with me and put them in the relationship with her. So I realized I needed help for sure. I thought I could do it on my own. This is another consequence of being brought up by a mother who was not there when you needed her. The need to do things on your own and thinking that that's the only way to do things. I'm asking you, have you been safe as a child to ask for help to your mom? Or did she shame you in some way when you ask for help, especially in front of other people? Perhaps she even told you it was not her problem, but yours to begin with, so go sort it out, You've created the situation, now go fix it. Why are you coming to bother me? Thinking she was teaching you to be tough. I remember my mom saying that, I'm just teaching you to be a tough person, so you're going to be a better person in life. Didn't work. Or maybe you've been shamed for being too weak and you grew up believing you need to prove you're tough. That's another one. So doing it on your own. You're the tough girl that can do it on her own, never asking for help. The fact is that there is nothing to prove to anybody. And it's so okay to need help and support. And this has not been easy for me to accept. So if you are not feeling it, I really get it. I'm not judging you for that one bit, because I've been there. I'd rather die than ask for help. for years and years and years. So I really get it. But if your mother or possibly other members of your family have been physically and emotionally abusive and you're still suffering because of it, then you need all the help you can get to transform your life. Even if you've put distance, there's still work to do within to really break free, to really break the cycle, and to really find who your true self is underneath all the layers and consequences of what you've been through. So now that we've been through all of that, let's give a closer look to boundary setting. Um, so setting boundaries is both an internal and an external work. The more you explore your inner world with the help of an experienced guide, maybe in a safe space such a women's circle, the more you will get grounded in your own strength. Um, and I know you might feel right now you don't have that strength in you, but I know you have. I really do. After all, you've been through all that you've been through so far, and you're still here. And today you're listening to this episode because you know deep down you have that strength and you're seeking the way to access it. So I so believe you can. And as you do your internal work, as you get more and more grounded in your strength, you will find that external boundaries come as a natural result of this work. That's been like the most amazing discovery. It was like when I started asking for help and I started going to women's circles, and I started really leaning into like a guide I trusted, um, and found my internal guide, because ultimately a guide from the outside is there if she's doing her job right. She's there to help you connect with that guidance that you have inside, and that guidance that you have inside is the one that is going to really bring you through the journey. And it's really amazing. It's really amazing. Yet sometimes it is necessary to fake it till you make it. It is necessary, even if you feel it's really hard, to start setting some boundaries around yourself, from working from the outside in. I know I had to. If I didn't want my life to get any worse, I was finding it really uncomfortable to set boundaries, but I had to. Even to find in me the liberty, the freedom to go looking for help, I needed to start setting boundaries, because looking for help was an admission that I was going against my mother in some way. Because if I need help for that, then I'm literally gonna have to go against her. It's a it's a mind game again, but so I needed that boundary. So sometimes you need to fake it, even if it feels uncomfortable. So let's go to the one key secret that I said from the beginning. This is the thing. I've read books about how to say powerful no and this and that and whatever. And look, it's all super valid information. Um, and it works really well in so many situations in your life. But when the narcissist in your life is your own mom, it's especially for daughters. Now there's a whole topic of sons of narcissistic mothers, and there's a ton to be said about that too. Um, but this is not the podcast, so we're talking about daughters of narcissistic mothers and the mother-daughter relationship. That the mother-daughter lineage is a different type of relationship, and it's like your mother is your entire world. She represents every woman in the world, actually, for you. um Hence, you might have noticed that relationships with women can be complex. And we'll go through that. We'll definitely speak to that a lot because it's very important. Um, the sisterhood wounds and all of that. But that makes it doubly as hard to set boundaries. So we need like a very specific approach for this very specific kind of relationship. And so the one thing that has 100% changed my life and made it the the best way for me to set boundaries, it sounds incredibly simple, but there you go, is say a direct no as required by the situation without ever, and that's the key, without ever justifying or trying to explain. Never justify or trying to explain why you're saying no. That's it. That's simple. Never justify or trying to explain. That gives her fuel. And at that point, you're in the loop. So let me give you some example, okay? Just to keep it really down to earth, practical life situation. She might want you to call her, okay? You're doing your own things. Maybe you're trying to work, maybe you're tending to your own children, you are out with your partner, whatever, and or you're doing nothing, you're just relaxing at home because you deserve that too, and she wants you to call her, and you actually really don't are not in a space to do that in that moment, and you know that, but she is guilt tripping you because she needs you right away. She has a need, or like the best one is when they just send you, oh, it's an emergency, call me. And that just is like, how can you not call? I mean, you get it, right? It's like it's done on purpose. I've had so many of those like little tiny messages like, oh, call me right now, and you think the world is ending, and then absolutely not. She just has to talk about the weather. Okay, so the answer would be, I hear you need me. I can't right now. I will call you later. And off. And that is if you want to call her later, but I'm just giving an example, okay? At this point, she will insist. We know that. They're not defeated that easily. She could get progressively more upset and try her best to manipulate you into doing exactly what she wants in the time frame of her choosing. The answer remains the same. I hear you, but I can't right now. I hear you, but no. And I know the temptation to give in or to argue, explain, justify is strong, but you're stronger. It doesn't matter if the justification makes solid sense to you. That was the mistake I was making all the time. It made solid sense to me. Mom, I can't ring you right now. I am giving a bath to my child, or I can't ring you. I'm in the middle of a work session, or and there's always there's always a way that she can make you feel like what you're doing is actually not so important. There is always a way to turn it around. There's always a way to guilt trip you. There's always a way to get upset and make you more upset and make you that you're gonna ring. There's always a way. Always a way. So that gives her fuel. Don't justify and do not try to explain. And and the temptation is strong. I get it. But you're stronger. It is really key not to add any fuel to her arsenal. So you just keep stating your decision. Even if you sound like a parrot, keep repeating yourself until she gives up. If it's possible, stop answering altogether. There's some cases where the insistence is strong, that they're not that easily defeated. You just stop answering. You do not need to answer her every message. You don't need to answer the phone if you have other things to do. Knock the phone off. Take your space. You are so allowed to prioritize yourself. You are. I couldn't say this enough. You are allowed to prioritize yourself and you deserve it. So what you keep saying is, I hear what you're saying, but no. You can also say, you're entitled to your opinion, but no. you can also say, I understand you're feeling that way, but no. And whatever she answers, you can say, my answer remains no. That's exactly what happened in the call that I spoke to at the beginning of this episode. I got several waves of reasons why I should do whatever, guilt tripping me, and then a little bit more aggressive, and I just whatever, like like listen to whatever. That's again a choice. You don't need to listen if you don't want. You can also say, I have to do something else right now. I can't listen to you. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And hang the phone. That's allowed too. My choice in the moment was to listen. But no. At the very end of every paragraph or every wave, there was like, okay, yeah, you said all that, but no. No. Oh, but you need to ring. You need to. No. I don't need to. No. 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 And you become like a cliff, and the waves are just coming, but you are not moving. You are not moving. Never justify or try to explain. That is the key. Your choices are your choices. You're entitled to your choices. You're entitled to your life. You're entitled to your space. And that's that. You don't need to be kind with this. It's key. It's key to your life. It's key to your happiness. This is not like something that we can go, "Oh, well, I'll start tomorrow. I don't really need to do this. It's not so important." This is essential. This is like, it's the lifeline. It's the thing that is gonna save your life. It's gonna save your relationships. It's gonna save your work. It's gonna save everything. And when you're learning to set a boundary with your mom, you will find, and that's a bigger topic again, but that boundary setting everywhere else in your life becomes so incredibly simple. Because chances are your boundary setting is not just bad with your mom, it's just non-existent everywhere in your life. And you're suffering the consequences for that. I speak from experience on this. I know I don't know you, but it's my guess. Because when you can't set boundaries with your mother is the example of the entire world for you when you're a small kid. And what you learn, the way you learn to relate with your mother is the way you learn to relate with the world. And so if you can't set a boundary with her, you more than likely find it very hard to set boundaries everywhere else. So once you set boundaries with her, she's the monster, right? She's the one that is like the scariest person to actually set a boundary with. Your inner child shrinks to like back to being like a 5-year-old, like back to being like so small, and oh my god, I'm trying to say no to mommy, and what's gonna happen to me? That same reaction happens when you're trying to say no to anyone around you. So again, in your workspace, in every other relationship you have, so that's why it's so important. And once you learn to do it with her, everything else, it's like so simple. It becomes really simple. I have found myself in situations where I would have been really challenged before beginning to set strong boundaries with my mother. And now it's like, oh, I used to find that hard. That's interesting. It happens like that. I promise you. Now, in some cases, a stronger boundary is going to be required. So maybe just saying no on the phone is not enough. Maybe just, doing what I just said is not enough. Even if you don't explain and you don't justify, if the situation is quite aggressive, if you know yourself what kind of relationship you have with your mom, but if there can be a need for space and you might feel the need to go no contact for a while, for the foreseeable future, forever. That depends on the type of relationship, the type of situation, and that is okay too. That is a boundary, and you're allowed to set it. Again, same thing applies. No explanation or justification is needed. You don't need to write a big letter saying why you are not talking to your mother anymore. You don't even need to explain it to your other members of the family, to your friends. You don't need to explain anything to anyone. There might be some people you feel super safe with. That's okay. But if you don't need to explain. I have been no contact for quite some time now, and I did not feel the need to go tell around. And I did say to some people, and the reactions can be mixed. So you really need to be very careful who you speak to or who you give explanations to, and justifications are never needed. Never needed. You don't need to justify your choices. If it's important for you, if it's right for you, if it's what makes you feel better, don't justify, go for it. You're allowed to do what is best for your life, and for your new family if you have one. Really, really, really key. Setting boundaries is challenging, especially at the beginning, and I get that. I really do. So I strongly advise getting support with this, as once you've learned to set powerful and clear boundaries, you will feel better and better as a result. Your life will change completely and for the better. I can't, if I go back to what my life was a couple of years ago, I can't recognize it. Like, it's night and day. It's a different reality. I feel like a different person. My relationships are completely different. And it has all started with setting a powerful boundary and stop justifying and explaining why, especially to my mother. I want to remind you that you're wonderful and you're so lovable, and you deserve to be happy, and you deserve a life that is your own and that is your own choice, and not just the consequence of all you have been through. Because if you're not happy right now, if you're struggling in relationship, if you're struggling with your work, if you're struggling to feel uh, chilled, relax, if you have anxiety all the time, if you feel sad, if you feel all of this constant turmoil that goes on, when you carry all that inside, that is it's just a consequence of what you've been through. That's not your real self. You're not an anxious person. You're not a scared person. You're not any of the things that you might believe about yourself. And the people around you might not be that too, like your family, as in your new family if you have one. The friends you have, there's so much that gets seen through those lenses as well. Your entire reality is viewed through the lenses of a person that has suffered through a lot of abuse from childhood on, by a mother that was unaware, hadn't a clue what she was doing, was very deeply challenged in her own childhood, and just took on a strategy that is very destructive and very toxic. So you deserve to get to know your own heart. You deserve to find that happiness that you have been probably looking for all your life and you never thought possible. And I know you can do it. You can turn it all around. And why do I know it? Because I did it. I've been through that. And since then, I also watched others did that too. And I can tell you that, in my experience, support is necessary. Having a safe space with someone who can hold space and guide you through the waves and layers of what you have experienced till you meet your own heart is essential. That is why I created Reclaim Your Fullness Women's Circle, to be a safe space where you can do just that, together with light-hearted women that are on the same journey as you, so they can really understand. They're holding space in a way that no one else can. You are actually allowed to feel the way you're feeling. There's that really deeply important part, the allowance to feel what's live and what's coming, even if it's ugly. And women that hold space for that, like your mother never did. And why a women's circle? I know for a long time I felt way more comfortable going to therapists that were men, because when you have a narcissistic mother, it's very hard to trust other women. It's a relationship wound that you're carrying, and so it can only really be healed through being in relationship. And the relationship with other women, it's so key. And then in relationship with yourself. So it's a journey, and support is really, really key. And if you feel like that's resonating with you, check the link in the description to know more about the offering that's there, because you deserve to live a fulfilling life where you feel safe, loved, and alive. And that's it for now. Lots of love.